Have you ever delved into the fascinating story of Joseph the Dreamer from the Bible? His life was an incredible journey full of unforgettable plot twists that will have you hooked from start to finish. Joseph probably believed that he had his life all figured out, but he couldn't have been more mistaken. Life had some unforeseen curveballs in store, making his journey even more challenging. But despite all the hardships he faced, Joseph never lost hope. His story is a testimony to the power of hope, forgiveness, and unwavering faith, even when the going gets tough. Let's explore Joseph's story together and uncover the profound lessons hidden within. However, before we begin, we kindly ask for your support by hitting the like button on your screen, sharing the link with your friends and family, and subscribing to our channel. Your engagement helps us create more content that you will enjoy. Now let's dive into Joseph's exciting story. The story begins in Canaan, where a wise and honorable shepherd named Jacob lives with his family in a tent village. He spent his days tending to his flocks with love and devotion, surrounded by the warmth and comfort of his loved ones. Joseph held a special place in Jacob's heart among his many sons, and he cherished him dearly. Joseph was a bright 17-year-old boy with a heart as pure as the morning sun and a spirit as free as the wind. Joseph had 11 brothers, 10 older and 1 younger. Joseph's mother had tragically passed away while giving birth to his younger brother, Benjamin. Jacob loved Joseph significantly and spent a lot of time with him, which made the other brothers envious. Joseph and his brothers helped their father and herded the sheep into the field. Jacob gifted Joseph a colorful coat like a rainbow on his 17th birthday. The coat had long sleeves that reached his wrists and a length that flowed to his ankles. It symbolized Jacob's profound love for Joseph, but unfortunately, it only made his brothers more envious, feeling that Joseph was unfairly favored. They felt overshadowed by the bond between Jacob and Joseph and often whispered among themselves, plotting ways to bring Joseph down from his high place in their father's eyes. On the other hand, Joseph was oblivious of his brother's jealousy and continued spending time with his father, herding the sheep and helping in the field. However, the brothers hated him and couldn't speak to him peaceably. It's heartbreaking to imagine how difficult it must have been for Joseph to deal with his brother's resentment, even though he had no idea about it. As the days passed, Joseph became a dreamer. He would share his dreams with his brothers, recounting the visions he had seen in his sleep. One night, Joseph had a peculiar dream. In it, he saw himself and his brothers gathering wheat in the field. Joseph's sheaf of wheat stood upright as they worked, while his brothers' sheaves bowed down to it. However, instead of rejoicing with him, Joseph's brothers jeered and sneered at him, mocking him with their disdainful voices. They hated him more for his dreams and words. Joseph had another dream, which was even more bizarre this time. He dreamt the sun, moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to him. He shared his dream with his father and brothers, but instead of being happy for him, his brothers were filled with envy and anger. They were jealous of Joseph in his dreams, even saying their father would bow down to him, making his brothers resent him more. Joseph was bewildered by his brothers' reaction. He believed his dreams were a gift from God, a glimpse into the world's mysteries. He never imagined that it could cause strife and division among his family. Days passed, the envy of Joseph's brothers turned into bitterness, and their bitterness turned into hatred. Joseph and his dreams were a source of discomfort to them, and they wanted to get rid of him once and for all. One day, Jacob sent Joseph to check on his brothers, who tended to their sheep in the field. When Joseph arrived, his brothers saw him coming from a distance, and their jealousy flared up again. They resented Joseph because of their father's favoritism toward him. The brothers hatched a plan to get rid of Joseph once and for all. The eldest brother, Reuben, was firmly against killing Joseph, and he suggested they should throw him into a pit instead. Joseph was seized by his jealous brothers, who stripped him of his robe and threw him into an empty pit. Despite his cries for help, they callously sat down to have their lunch, leaving him to his fate. At this time, a caravan of merchants passed by on their way to Egypt. Seeing an opportunity to make some money, Judah, one of his brothers, suggested they sell Joseph to the merchants. With Reuben absent, the other brothers quickly agreed to the plan. They pulled Joseph out of the pit and sold him to the merchants for 20 pieces of silver. The caravan then took Joseph to Egypt, leaving his brothers to devise a story to tell their father, Jacob. And when Reuben returned, he was terrified to hear what his brother had done. The brothers took Joseph's robe, killed a goat, and dipped the robe in the blood of the goat. As they made their way back home, they presented Jacob with a bloody garment and told him a lie that Joseph had been attacked and killed by a wild animal. Jacob was overcome with grief at the loss of his beloved son, and the sight of the stained robe only deepened his pain. When the traders arrived in Egypt, they sold Joseph to a wealthy man named Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. Joseph was a young man who possessed exceptional knowledge, was hardworking, and had good looks. He did all the chores Potiphar assigned him with utmost dedication and sincerity. Potiphar soon noticed Joseph's diligence and handed over the responsibility of his entire household to him. Joseph was elated to have gained Potiphar's favor and worked tirelessly to prove himself trustworthy. However, Potiphar's house was brewing with trouble as his wife began to notice Joseph's good looks and kind heart. She tried to tempt Joseph into doing wrong, but he refused every time. He was a young man of honor and knew it was wrong to betray his master's trust. Nevertheless, Potiphar's wife persisted daily, trying to seduce Joseph into doing something immoral. But Joseph remained solid and faithful to his beliefs, refusing to give in to her wicked schemes. One day when Joseph was alone at home, Potiphar's wife grabbed him by his coat and begged him to stay with her. Joseph, fearing to disobey his master and God, ran away, leaving his coat behind. Potiphar's wife was furious and used the coat as evidence to accuse Joseph of wrongdoing. When Potiphar heard her story, he was angry and imprisoned Joseph. Even in prison, Joseph remained faithful to God, trusted him, and worked hard. Soon he gained the trust of the prison warden, who put him in charge of all the other prisoners. Despite being in prison, Joseph didn't lose hope. He knew God had a plan for him and trusted him with all his heart. As a friendly reminder, falsely accusing someone is never acceptable, just like what happened to Joseph when Potiphar's wife accused him. As decent human beings, let's always strive to be truthful and fair when dealing with others. If you agree with this, please feel free to express your thoughts in the comments section below. Now on to the next part. While Joseph was still in prison, the Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker also ended up there. They were troubled by their dreams and didn't know what to do. Fortunately for them, Joseph was a man blessed with divine wisdom and could interpret their dreams with remarkable accuracy. Joseph's gift of interpretation proved a valuable asset for these two inmates. The cupbearer hesitated at first to confide his dream to Joseph, probably trembling like a leaf in the wind. However, the cupbearer eventually mustered up the courage to confide in him. His dream was vivid. He saw a vine with 3 branches flourishing and bearing grapes. He squeezed these grapes into Pharaoh's cup and presented them to him like an offering fit for royalty. It was a beautiful vision. On the other hand, the baker had an upsetting dream. He saw himself carrying 3 baskets atop his head, filled with baked goods intended for Pharaoh. Suddenly, birds swooped down and consumed the contents of the top basket, leaving him disheartened. Joseph listened intently to their dreams. He spoke with conviction, assuring them both that God had unveiled the meanings of their dreams to him. His words were reassuring, and his demeanor was calm and composed, leaving them both feeling hopeful and comforted. In an act of great wisdom, Joseph, endowed with a unique gift of interpretation, used his divine insight to decipher the dreams of the cupbearer and the baker. To the cupbearer, Joseph proclaimed that he would regain his lost position within 3 sunsets, and this prophecy came to fruition with remarkable accuracy. However, a grim fate awaited the baker, as Joseph foretold his demise by hanging, with birds feasting upon his flesh. Astonishingly, reality mirrored Joseph's prophetic words 3 days later, as the cupbearer regained his status while the baker met his end, just as foreseen. Despite his incredible foresight, the cupbearer, in his heedlessness, forgot Joseph, leaving him to languish in the confines of his prison cell, neglected and alone. Nevertheless, Joseph remained undeterred, holding on to his unwavering faith in the divine plan, trusting that every twist and turn had a purpose. After 2 long years of obscurity, fate intervened once more with a perplexing dream troubling Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. He sought answers from his wisest sages and magicians, only to baffle them. In this hour of need, Joseph was summoned, emerging from the shadows of oblivion to unravel the mysteries that confounded even the most learned minds of the land. So life is like a big adventure full of surprises, you know? Sometimes things don't go as planned, but that's okay. There's this awesome thing called God's timing, which means everything happens at just the right moment. Just like Joseph, he struggled but never lost faith because he knew God had a plan for him. Let's delve into the intriguing dreams of Egypt's Pharaoh. Egypt's Pharaoh had two troubling dreams, one fateful night that left him uneasy and anxious. In the first dream, Pharaoh stood in the mighty river Nile, watching 7 plump, fat cows leisurely grazing in a lush green field. Suddenly, out of nowhere, 7 skinny, sickly cows emerged from the river Nile and devoured the 7 fat cows. In the second dream, he witnessed 7 healthy ears of grain growing on one stalk. But his peace was short-lived as he observed 7 thin and withered ears of grain sprout out of nowhere and swallow up the healthy ones. These dreams deeply disturbed Pharaoh, and he immediately summoned his wise men and magicians to interpret their meaning. However, to no avail, they could not explain the dreams that plagued Pharaoh's mind. Pharaoh's cupbearer, who happened to be present, suddenly recalled a young Hebrew man who had correctly interpreted his dream while in prison. Realizing the significance of this memory, he rushed to Pharaoh and reminded him of the prisoner's remarkable gift. Pharaoh acted promptly and ordered Joseph to be brought to his palace. Joseph had to shave and change into more presentable clothes before coming in before the Pharaoh. Pharaoh inquired if Joseph could interpret dreams, and Joseph replied that God interprets dreams and that he was simply a vessel through which God worked. As Pharaoh described his dreams, Joseph's understanding began to unfold. He revealed that the 7 fat cows and the 7 healthy ears of grain symbolized 7 years of abundant harvest, a time of plenty in Egypt. However, the 7 skinny cows and the 7 thin ears of corn starkly contrast, representing 7 years of devastating famine. The famine, Joseph explained, would be so severe that it would consume all the abundance of the previous years. These dreams, he concluded, were a divine warning from God to prepare for the impending famine. Joseph advised Pharaoh to use the 7 years of plenty to store food grains, livestock, and other supplies for the coming famine. He recommended that a wise and discerning man be appointed to oversee food storage during plenty. This man should gather 1/5 of all the harvests and store them in granaries. Then when the famine comes, there will be more than enough food to feed the people of Egypt. Pharaoh was astounded by Joseph's wisdom and insight, recognizing that he was a man filled with God's Spirit. In a momentous decision, he appointed Joseph as the ruler over Egypt, second only to himself. He bestowed upon him a signet ring, fine clothes, and even an excellent chariot to ride in. Joseph went from being a prisoner to becoming the second in command in all of Egypt. Can you imagine being imprisoned for a crime you did not commit, only to become the second in command of an entire country? That's a remarkable transformation, like going from being a nobody to a hero in the blink of an eye. Even more fascinating is how Joseph's life took a complete turnaround when God intervened and turned his sorrow into joy and his pain into peace. It's truly unique. And just as God transformed Joseph's life, he can transform yours too. It's exciting to see how this story unfolds. Let's keep following Joseph's journey enthusiastically and see what happens next. After Joseph interpreted Pharaoh's dreams, he was so impressed that he recognized Joseph's brilliance and wisdom. Pharaoh arranged for Joseph to marry a beautiful woman named Asenath to show his appreciation. Asenath was the daughter of a prominent priest named Potiphar, which only added to Joseph's status in Egypt. With his intelligence and wisdom, Joseph quickly rose to a position of influence and became a respected leader in the country, almost like a superhero. During the years of abundance, Joseph ensured that Egypt prospered by storing enough grain to sustain the people through the lean years ahead. He grew extra food grains and built food storage in preparation for the 7 years of famine. Before the famine began, Joseph had already had 2 sons with Asenath. After 7 years of abundant harvests, a harsh and unrelenting famine descended upon the land of Egypt, stretching its unforgiving claws across the entire region. Despite the widespread famine, Egypt could still provide ample food for its people, thanks to Joseph's wise and foresight leadership. His careful planning and management during the years of abundance resulted in significant surplus food stores that could now be used to help the people survive the famine. Pharaoh issued a decree that all should seek out Joseph and follow his every counsel to ensure survival through these trying times. Meanwhile, Jacob and his sons faced the cruel grip of famine in Canaan. Their stomachs growled in hunger, their fields lay barren, and their flocks dwindled to nothing. The desperate whispers of the people carried news of abundant grain in the distant lands of Egypt, where sustenance flowed like a river. With a heavy heart, Jacob summoned his sons and implored them to embark on a journey to Egypt, where salvation awaited in golden grains. With grim determination, Joseph's 10 elder brethren heeded their father's plea, leaving behind the youngest Benjamin, shielded by Jacob's fearful embrace. The 10 brothers traveled across rugged terrain under the hot sun, feeling hungry and tired. After a long and challenging journey, they were happy to see the great city of Egypt in the distance. They were standing before Joseph, not realizing they were related, and had no idea what awaited them in the heart of the Egyptian city. Joseph remembered his brothers but kept quiet about his identity to them. He treated them like strangers and spoke rudely to them, just like the dream he had had when he was younger. He asked where they had come from, and they replied that they had come from Canaan to buy food. Joseph replied that he didn't believe them. He said they looked like spies, and they came to see the weakness of their land. The brothers were terrified and protested their innocence, explaining that they were all sons of one man from the land of Canaan, and that they had come to buy food for their starving family. But Joseph insisted that they were spies and instructed that they prove their innocence by bringing their youngest brother Benjamin to him. Joseph put them all together in prison for 3 days, and during their time in jail, the brothers reflected on their past actions and realized that their troubles were a punishment for their mistreatment of Joseph many years ago. So Joseph's final years in death were not marked by sadness or despair, but by hope and assurance. For he knew that his life had been a testament to God's faithfulness and that his legacy would endure for generations to come. Thank you so much for your valuable support and for sharing your thoughts on Joseph's story. Your feedback means a lot to us. We are grateful for it. If you know anyone else who could benefit from hearing Joseph's story, please share it with them. And if you enjoyed the content, we would greatly appreciate it if you could give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to our channel for more Bible stories. We hope you have a fantastic day and wish you abundant blessings. Please take good care of yourself, and we look forward to hearing from you again soon.